Joining us right now is Beige Book's COO, Shehzad Qazi. Good morning to you.
Thank you.
So what are we seeing here? What do you really think is happening?
Well, what the data are showing is that you had a couple of positive months. Jan and Feb actually didn't look bad, but then March is when you get this massive deceleration, and it actually brings the entire quarter down with it to where you see an economy that could have looked like it's doing all right, not terribly, to where it's actually slowing down, right, of course, as you get these 145% tariffs or so forth.
Okay, so therefore the question becomes, if you're in the art of the deal, does the U.S. now have more leverage over China, perhaps?
I think the U.S. has more leverage regardless of what the data would have shown. On the other hand, one quarter's worth of weak data can trouble markets. I don't think this is something that President Xi or the Communist Party are particularly going to be bothered by.
In terms of what we saw over the weekend, because this is what you study and this is what you spend your time doing, what is the mindset, not of the, I don't think we can understand the mindset of what's going on in the White House, really. But what's the mindset of, and we were just talking to Eunice, of the people in China, and then, of course, the people at the top of China?
Yeah. Well, look, I think the mindset is that we need to focus this year on stabilizing the economy. They're claiming that they're going to do a 5% GDP growth rate again. I'm going to be increasingly very skeptical of these growth numbers that are coming out of China at the official level. But what I'm not skeptical of is the fact that there is this desire to do more fiscal activity, to do more fiscal spending, to continue to ease monetary policy in order to provide support to the industrial sector. I think that's where, by and large, their efforts are going to be concentrated. I don't think they come out and do anything on the household side. I don't know if they even know how to. And there's ideological barriers stopping them from, I think, pursuing that. In
terms of the leverage point, this idea of once you take semiconductors and phones and screens off the list, how much does China care about the rest of the stuff? Because it's unclear how much the U.S. cares about the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, we certainly decided that some of the most important things for us are not going to be under a different tariff basket, right? So we are expecting more sectoral tariffs, more investigations, stuff that was, by the way, going to happen anyway, has now been announced. The reality is that, look, the Chinese economy is heavily dependent on exports. They are still very heavily dependent on their manufacturing base. From day one, they've made it clear they don't want a single part of this trade war. If we could go back to how things were before President Trump was elected the first time, I think they would take that deal in a heartbeat.
How much pressure do you think they can apply vis-a-vis U.S. Treasuries?
Look, could they weaponize it? Of course they could. They're the second largest holder, but that creates problems for themselves, right? I mean, yes, the yuan is now weakening. They're trying to support that. At the same time, they don't want an incredibly strong yuan either. So that starts getting very, very complicated for them. So I think that Treasury weaponizing argument gets a lot of play. It's very sexy. I'm just not sure if that's their first move. And also, I think that could really inflame the situation. That's a very serious escalation from the U.S. standpoint, I think.
Okay, and then the other question relates to the degree you think that China is capable of creating better relationships with South Korea. Obviously, Russia's on board. It sounds like Spain is interested in what's going on with China in terms of strengthening those relationships. What's the possibility over the next 90 days as these tariff negotiations play out? Not that we, meaning the U.S., are able to put together a coalition of allies, but that they are able to put together a coalition of allies.
Yeah, that's the thing I think people in D.C. have a hard time wrapping their minds around. We could be the biggest consumer in the world, but that's not stopping these other countries from saying, hey, China is not only the second largest economy. For most of us, it's in our neighborhood. It's right there. So they have to be very careful about how they manage their relations with China. We're not going to get to turn these countries against China or create a coalition against China. We might be able to have some wins in the interim. There's hope, for example, that we can get these countries to increase, their clampdown of transshipment, for example, maybe ramp up some tariffs on Chinese products that are coming in and so forth. So perhaps there's some wins to be had there, but let's not get carried away and imagine that somehow we've got this massive anti-China coalition that we can get there.